There are a variety of Moai out there. Some that are very tiny, others that are almost 7 stories tall. Their sizes, although they range in how big and fat they are, the more average size is about 14 to 15 feet tall and somewhere around 10 to 20 tons in weight.
So we have this contrast between a place where we'd expect to find nothing, but to find some of the most spectacular archaeology in the world.
For over a century, this ancient script has haunted researchers, defied cryptographers, and driven scholars to madness. 23 wooden tablets covered in mysterious symbols, each one a fragment of a lost language that no living person can read. The Rongorongo of Easter Island, one of humanity's greatest unsolved puzzles. Until now. In a breakthrough that has sent shockwaves through the archaeological world, an advanced artificial intelligence system has finally cracked the code. What it revealed wasn't just a forgotten language or ancient poetry. It was a warning. A message carved in desperation by a civilization watching itself collapse. And the words they left behind describe something far more disturbing than anyone expected. This isn't just about the past. It's about what they saw coming and why they believed it would happen again. The script that refused to be read. Deep in the archives of museums across the world, 23 wooden tablets sit behind glass, protected from light, temperature, and human touch. Each one is small enough to hold in 2 hands, carved from driftwood or salvaged planks washed ashore on the most isolated inhabited island on Earth. The wood is dark, weathered by centuries, and etched with rows upon rows of tiny glyphs. Birds, fish, human figures, geometric patterns, spirals, and shapes that seem to shift meaning depending on how you look at them. This is Rongorongo, and no one alive knows how to read it. The symbols are arranged in a writing system called reverse bostrafidon. You read one line from left to right, then flip the tablet 180 degrees and read the next line in the opposite direction. It's disorienting, deliberate, and unlike almost any other script on the planet. The figures themselves are hypnotic, some elegant, some twisted, some that feel almost alive. Scholars have spent lifetimes trying to decode them. Most failed. A few went further than they should have. The first European to document Rongorongo was a French missionary named Eugène Hérode in 1864. He arrived on Easter Island to convert the Rapanui people, and in nearly every home he found wooden tablets covered in strange carvings. The locals treated them with reverence, but when Hérode asked what they meant, no one could answer. The knowledge had already been lost. By the time serious researchers arrived decades later, only a handful of tablets remained. The rest had been burned by missionaries who believed they were pagan idols, or taken by collectors who saw them as exotic curiosities. The Rapanui elders who might have known the meaning were long dead, wiped out by slave raids and disease. All that remained were the symbols, silent and unreadable. Linguists tried everything. They compared Rongorongo to Polynesian languages, to Chinese characters, to Indus Valley scripts. They analyzed the frequency of symbols, searched for patterns, tested theories of syllabic writing, logographic meaning, and mnemonic devices. Some believed it was a true written language. Others thought it was a ceremonial script, meant only to jog the memory of trained chanters during rituals. But every theory hit the same wall. There simply wasn't enough data. With only 23 tablets and no bilingual text to use as a key, Rongorongo remained locked. Then came the obsession. In the 1950s, a Hungarian scholar named Thomas Barthel spent years cataloging every single glyph, assigning each one a number. He identified over 600 distinct symbols, far more than an alphabet, but fewer than a full logographic system like Chinese. His work became the foundation for all future studies, but even Barthel admitted he had only scratched the surface. Other researchers followed, each one convinced they were close to a breakthrough. Some claimed to have found astronomical references. Others saw genealogies, creation myths, or agricultural records, but none could prove their theories beyond doubt. By the early 21st century, Rongorongo had become a graveyard of academic careers. Too many researchers had staked their reputations on translations that later fell apart. The script became untouchable, a puzzle so notorious that even attempting it was considered professional suicide. The few who still worked on it did so quietly, in private, haunted by the same question that had plagued everyone before them. What were the Rapanui trying so desperately to preserve, and why did they write it in a way that seemed designed to be forgotten? The machine that learned to see. In early 2024, a research consortium based in New Zealand announced a project that most experts dismissed as impossible. They were going to use artificial intelligence to decode Rongorongo, not with traditional linguistic methods, but by teaching a machine to recognize patterns that human minds simply couldn't see. The AI system they built was unlike anything used before in epigraphy. It combined deep learning neural networks, image recognition algorithms, and a process called unsupervised pattern extraction. The machine wasn't programmed with theories about what Rongorongo might mean. Instead, it was trained to analyze the raw structure of the glyphs themselves, how they repeated, how they clustered, how they changed position across different tablets. The team fed the AI high-resolution scans of all 23 tablets, along with thousands of reference images from Polynesian petroglyphs, Maori carvings, and other Pacific Island scripts. They also included linguistic datasets from over 200 undeciphered and partially deciphered writing systems throughout history. The goal was to let the machine find connections that no human researcher, constrained by expectation and bias, would ever notice. For months, the AI processed the data in silence. It mapped every glyph, measured the spacing between symbols, tracked how certain figures appeared together, and calculated probabilities for syntactic structure. It identified recurring sequences that might represent phonetic sounds, names, or repeated ritual phrases. It even detected microscopic tool marks on the wood, revealing that different tablets had been carved by different hands at different times, possibly even during different periods of the island's history. Then, in late summer, the system did something unexpected. It flagged a subset of glyphs that appeared on only 6 of the tablets, symbols that had always been dismissed as decorative flourishes or carving errors. The AI recognized them as a distinct grammatical layer, a kind of meta-script embedded within the main text. When isolated and reordered, these symbols formed a structure that mirrored the syntax of archaic Rapanui, the native language of Easter Island, but with verb tenses that didn't exist in any known Polynesian dialect. The researchers were stunned. The machine had found a hidden layer of meaning that had been invisible for over a century. When they ran the isolated sequences through a secondary decryption model trained on oral histories collected from the last surviving Rapanui speakers in the 1920s, the AI began producing translations. At first, they were fragmented, single words and short phrases. Sky, ancestor, hunger, darkness coming. But as the system refined its understanding, longer passages emerged. And what they said made the entire research team go silent. One of the lead scientists, Dr. Miriam Kovalenko, later described the moment in an interview. "We thought we'd find myths," she said. "Stories about gods or kings or the creation of the island. But this was different. It wasn't mythology. It was documentation, a record, and the tone was terror. The warning carved in wood. The first complete passage the AI translated came from a tablet known as the Mamari Tablet, housed in the archives of the Anthropological Museum in Rome. The wood is small, barely 30 centimeters long, and covered in densely packed glyphs that spiral inward toward the center. For decades, researchers believed it was a lunar calendar, a guide for tracking the phases of the moon to coordinate planting and fishing. The AI translation revealed something far darker. In the time of the great silence, when the birds no longer sang and the fish turned away from our shores, the elders gathered beneath the stone faces. They asked the ancestors what we had done to anger the gods. The answer came not in words, but in dreams. All of them the same dream. The sky opening, the sea rising, the earth swallowing the giants we built to protect us, and in the center of it all, a face we did not recognize, carved from shadow, watching. The passage continued, describing a series of catastrophic events. Crops failing not from drought, but from soil that refused to hold life. Fish dying in massive numbers, their bodies washing ashore with eyes that had turned white. Trees that stopped growing, their roots pulling back from the earth as if trying to escape. And through it all, the recurring image of the Moai statues, the great stone faces, slowly sinking into the ground. But the most disturbing part was the ending. We carved these words so that those who come after will know. The collapse is not punishment, it is a cycle. The island does not belong to us. We were only ever guests. And when the true owners return, they will take back what was always theirs. The researchers cross-referenced this passage with oral histories and found echoes of the same themes. Rapanui legend spoke of Make, the creator god, but also of older spirits, the first people who lived on the island before humans arrived. These beings were said to dwell beneath the earth, sleeping, waiting. The Moai, according to some traditions, weren't built to honor ancestors. They were built to keep something down. When the AI moved to the next tablet, the translations became even more explicit. This one, known as the Santiago Staff, is the longest Rongorongo artifact in existence, over 120 centimeters of densely carved wood. It had always been assumed to be a genealogical record, a list of tribal leaders or important families. The AI found names, yes, but not of chiefs, of places. These are the sites where the earth opened, where the stone faces sank, where the watchers failed. Rano, where the giants sleep unfinished. Ahu Tongariki, where 15 stood and 15 fell. Anakena, where the first boat arrived and where the first blood was spilled. Mark these places. Do not build there again. Do not dig. Do not disturb. And then, a line that sent chills through the entire research team. If you are reading this, it has already begun again. The pattern beneath the words. As the AI continued its work, translating tablet after tablet, a larger pattern emerged. The Rongorongo texts weren't random. They were organized, methodical, almost scientific. Different tablets covered different aspects of the collapse. Some detailed environmental changes, tracking the disappearance of specific bird species, the drying of fresh water sources, the sudden infertility of certain crop strains. Others recorded social breakdown, wars between clans, the toppling of rival Moai, the rise of a cannibal cult in the final desperate years. But woven through all of it was a single, recurring obsession. The ground beneath the island was changing. Multiple tablets described sinkholes opening without warning, swallowing homes and people. Stone platforms, the ahu that held the Moai, cracking and tilting as if something underneath was shifting. The Rapanui had noticed it, documented it, and tried to understand it. They dug test pits near several of the major Moai sites and found chambers, voids, tunnels that they insisted they had not carved. One passage, translated from a fragment known as the Small Santiago Tablet, was almost clinical in its detail. Beneath the platform at Ahutahai, we found a hollow. 10 men could stand inside. The walls were smooth, not like stone shaped by tools, but like stone shaped by water. We descended with torches. At the bottom, there were marks, not writing, not carvings. Marks that looked like fingers had been dragged through soft clay, but the stone was hard as bone. The passage ended abruptly, as if the carver had stopped mid-sentence. Dr. Kovalenko's team compared these descriptions with modern geological surveys of Easter Island. In the 1990s, ground-penetrating radar had detected hollow spaces beneath several of the major Ahu platforms. At the time, they were dismissed as collapsed lava tubes, natural voids left by ancient volcanic activity, but when the AI's translations were overlaid with the radar data, the locations matched almost perfectly. The Rapanui had known. Centuries before modern instruments, they had known something was beneath their monuments. And they had been terrified of it. The message: we weren't meant to find. The final translated tablet came from the most controversial artifact in the entire Rongorongo corpus, a piece known as the Mamari Tablet, held in private collection and rarely studied. The wood is charred along one edge, as if someone tried to burn it but stopped. The glyphs on this tablet are different from the others, rougher, more erratic, carved in a hurry. When the AI processed it, the translation came through in fragments, broken sentences that read like a confession. We tried to stop it. We thought if we carved the words, if we remembered, if we warned those who came after, it would be enough. But the earth does not listen to warnings. The sea does not care for history. The faces we built to watch over us now watch us die. And the thing beneath is waking. It moves through the stone. It moves through the water. It moves through the dreams of the last children. We do not have the words to describe it. We do not have the words to stop it. So we carve these warnings and pray that when you find them, you will do what we could not. Leave. Leave before the island remembers what it was before we came. The researchers sat in silence after reading the translation. One of them, a linguist named Dr. Haruto Tanaka, finally spoke. "This isn't mythology," he said. "This is eyewitness testimony. They were documenting something real." The team decided to run one final test. They asked the AI to analyze not just the text, but the emotional tone embedded in the syntax, the choice of glyphs, the pressure marks left by the carving tools. Modern sentiment analysis can detect stress, fear, even desperation in ancient writing. The result was unanimous across all 23 tablets. Whoever carved these words was terrified. What lies beneath? In the months since the translations were completed, the research team has gone public with their findings, and the response has been explosive. Mainstream archaeologists remain skeptical, demanding peer review and independent verification. Linguists have criticized the AI's methodology, arguing that machine translations of undeciphered scripts are inherently unreliable. The Rapanui community has been divided, with some elders saying the translations confirm what their ancestors always knew, while others accuse the researchers of disrespecting sacred knowledge. But the most unsettling development came not from the academic world, but from the island itself. In late 2024, seismic monitoring stations on Easter Island detected a series of low-frequency vibrations emanating from beneath the Rongorongo quarry, the site where most of the Moai were carved. The vibrations were faint, barely perceptible, but they repeated at regular intervals over a period of several weeks. Geologists attributed them to minor tectonic shifts, normal activity for a volcanic island. Then, in early 2025, a team of Chilean researchers conducting routine maintenance on one of the underground monitoring stations reported something strange. One of their sensors, placed deep in a lava tube near Ahu Tongariki, had recorded an anomaly. The data showed a sudden spike in magnetic field disturbance, followed by what appeared to be a rhythmic pattern, almost like a pulse. When they retrieved the sensor and analyzed the recording, they found something embedded in the signal, a sequence of low-frequency tones that, when slowed down and amplified, formed a structure eerily similar to the Rongorongo glyphs. As if something beneath the island was trying to communicate. The Chilean government has since restricted access to several of the major Moai sites, citing safety concerns. Tourism to Easter Island has dropped sharply, and the research team that decoded Rongorongo has quietly shut down their public communications. Dr. Kovalenko, in her final interview before going silent, was asked if she believed the Rapanui warnings were real. She paused for a long time before answering. "I believe they carved those tablets because they saw their world ending," she said, "and I believe they wanted us to know that endings don't always stay buried." Easter Island sits alone in the Pacific, 3,500 kilometers from the nearest continent. The Moai still stand, silent, watching, and beneath them, something stirs. The Rapanui tried to warn us. Now we have to decide whether to listen